Jake Thompson sat on his old couch, staring at the red notice in his hands. The paper felt heavy, like it weighed 1,000 pounds. Final notice, pay or leave, was written in big bold letters across the top. He had exactly 7 days to come up with $3,000, or he would be sleeping on the streets. At 28 years old, Jake had nothing to show for his life except a pile of bills and an empty bank account. His small apartment was falling apart, with a leaky roof and a heater that barely worked. The walls were thin, and he could hear his neighbors arguing every night. This wasn't how he imagined his life would turn out. Just 3 years ago, Jake thought he was going to be rich. He had started a small business making phone apps, convinced he would be the next big success story. He borrowed money from everyone he knew, maxed out his credit cards, and even took out loans he couldn't afford. But the business failed within a year, leaving him drowning in debt. Things got worse when his father got sick. The medical bills came one after another, each one bigger than the last. Jake spent every penny he had trying to save his dad, but it wasn't enough. When his father passed away 6 months ago, Jake was left alone with even more debt and a broken heart. Now, sitting in his cold apartment, Jake felt completely hopeless. He had applied for dozens of jobs, but nobody wanted to hire someone with such bad credit and no recent work experience. His friends had stopped returning his calls, tired of being asked for money. His family had already helped as much as they could. That's when Jake remembered something strange his father had told him years ago. His dad used to work as a scientist, studying weird creatures and doing research that Jake never really understood. Sometimes, late at night, his father would tell him stories about his great-aunt, Maggie, who was supposedly very rich but also very odd. "Your Aunt Maggie has some unusual friends," his father would say with a mysterious smile. "She lives in a world most people don't even know exists." Jake had always thought these were just silly stories. Aunt Maggie had died about a year ago, and Jake had never even met her. She was his grandfather's sister, and the family had lost touch with her decades ago. Everyone said she was crazy and lived like a hermit in a big house outside the city. But desperation makes people do strange things. Jake decided to look into his aunt's old belongings, which were stored in a dusty box his father had left behind. Most of it was junk, old photos, strange medals, and papers written in languages he couldn't read. Then he found it. Hidden at the bottom of the box was an official-looking document with a lawyer's letterhead. Jake's hands shook as he read the words. It was a copy of Aunt Maggie's will, and what he saw made his heart race. According to the document, Aunt Maggie had left her entire fortune to any family member who could complete one very specific task. The person had to get married to someone from another planet within 1 year of her death. Jake read the sentence 3 times. Sure, he was making a mistake. The will mentioned property worth over $50 million, including a huge mansion, research facilities, and bank accounts. Full of money. But there was a catch that seemed impossible. The marriage had to be to an actual alien from outer space. Jake's first thought was that his aunt really had been crazy. Aliens weren't real, right? This had to be some kind of joke. But as he kept reading, he found more documents that made him think twice. There were official government papers, photographs of strange-looking creatures, and what appeared to be immigration documents for beings from other worlds. Could this be real? Jake spent the next 3 days researching everything he could find. Online, what he discovered shocked him. There were rumors, hidden forums, and blurry photos suggesting that aliens had been living on Earth for years. The government apparently kept it secret, but there were entire communities of these beings hiding in plain sight. With only a few months left before the deadline in his aunt's will, Jake made a decision that would change his life forever. Was going to find one of these aliens and convince them to marry him. It sounded completely insane, but what choice did he have? Jake started his search in the strangest parts of the city, places he had never been before. He visited underground clubs, weird shops, and areas where normal people never went. For weeks he found nothing but strange looks and dead ends. Then, one rainy evening, Jake stumbled into a small coffee shop in the basement of an old building. The place looked normal enough, but something felt different. The customers didn't quite look like regular humans. Their skin colors were unusual. Their eyes were shaped differently. Some had extra fingers or strange markings. That's when he saw her. She was sitting alone in a corner booth, hunched over a laptop and surrounded by papers. Her skin was a light purple color with darker spots, and she had 3 eyes instead of 2. Her hair was silver and seemed to shimmer in the dim light. Most people would have been scared or disgusted, but Jake just saw his solution. Her name was Zara, and she was working 3 different jobs just to survive. She cleaned offices at night, delivered food during the day, and did computer repairs. On weekends, she was trying to save money to bring her younger brothers to Earth from their home planet, which was in the middle of a terrible war. Jake watched her for an hour before getting the courage to approach. His heart was pounding as he walked over to her table. This was it, his chance to save himself and maybe help someone else at the same time. "Excuse me," he said, his voice shaking slightly. "I know this might sound crazy, but I have a business proposition for you." Zara looked up at him with all 3 of her eyes, clearly suspicious. In her experience, humans who approached aliens usually wanted something bad. But Jake seemed different, nervous and desperate, but not mean. "What kind of business?" she asked. In perfect English, though her accent was unlike anything Jake had ever heard, Jake took a deep breath and explained everything. The inheritance, the deadline, his desperate situation, and his idea for a marriage that would help them both. Zara listened without saying a word, her expression unreadable. When he finished talking, Zara was quiet for a long time. Finally, she asked, "What would I get out of this arrangement?" Jake explained that she would become a legal citizen, get access to money for her family, and never have to worry about being deported back to her dangerous homeworld. It would solve all her problems just like it would solve his, Zara agreed. To think about it, and they exchanged contact information. Jake left the coffee shop feeling hopeful for the first time in months. Maybe, just maybe, this crazy plan would actually work. 3 weeks later, Jake found himself standing outside the city hall in his only good suit, which he had borrowed from his neighbor. His hands were sweating as he checked his watch for the 10th time. Zara was supposed to meet him here in 5 minutes for their wedding appointment. He still couldn't believe this was actually happening. After that first meeting at the coffee shop, they had met several more times to work out the details of their arrangement. Zara had been careful and suspicious at first, asking lots of questions about the inheritance and wanting to see all the legal documents. She even brought her younger brother Tom to one of their meetings to help her understand the contract. Tom was also an alien, but he looked more human than Zara. He could pass for a regular person, if he didn't look too closely at his unusually bright green eyes. He worked as a translator for the government and understood Earth laws better than his sister. After reading through everything, he had given Zara his approval, though Jake could tell he didn't completely trust the situation. She's been hurt before by humans making false promises. Tom had warned Jake privately. "If you're lying about any of this, I'll make sure you regret it." Oh. But Jake wasn't lying. He was desperate, sure, but he was also honest about what this marriage would be. A business deal. Nothing more. They would both get what they needed and then live separate lives. Now, as Jake waited outside the government building, he wondered if Zara would actually show up. Maybe she had changed her mind. Maybe she had found another solution to her problems. Maybe she had realized this whole plan was crazy. Then he saw her walking up the street and his breath caught in his throat. She was wearing a simple blue dress that somehow made her purple skin look beautiful instead of strange. Her silver hair was braided with small flowers, and she walked with a grace that made people stop and stare. She looked nervous, but determined. "Came," Jake said, relief flooding through him. "I keep my promises," Zara replied, her 3 eyes meeting his. "Are you ready for this?" The wedding ceremony took only 20 minutes. A tired-looking clerk read the legal words while Jake and Zara stood side by side, barely touching. Tom was there as a witness, along with a random stranger the clerk had pulled in from the hallway. When it came time to exchange rings, they used simple bands Jake had bought from a discount store. "You may kiss the bride," the clerk said without. Looking up from his paperwork, Jake and Zara looked at each other awkwardly. They hadn't discussed this part. After a moment, Zara leaned forward and gave him a quick, formal kiss on the cheek. Her skin was surprisingly warm and soft. "Congratulations," the clerk said, handing them their marriage certificate. Next, and just like that, Jake was married to an alien. As they walked out of the building, the whole thing felt surreal. He kept expecting someone to jump out and tell him this was all a hidden camera show. The inheritance paperwork moved faster than Jake had expected. Within 2 weeks, lawyers were calling him to arrange meetings. Apparently, Great-Aunt Maggie had been very specific in her will about how things should be handled. All Jake had to do was prove he was married to an extraterrestrial being, which the government records now officially confirmed. The mansion was even bigger than Jake had imagined. It sat on 50 acres outside the city, surrounded by tall trees and high walls that kept curious people away. The house itself looked like something from a movie, with dozens of rooms, a huge library, and strange decorations from all over the galaxy. Zara was amazed when she first saw the place. She walked through the rooms with wide eyes, touching the alien artifacts and sculptures like she was greeting old friends. Some of the decorations were from her home planet, things she hadn't seen since she was a child. "Your aunt must have been an extraordinary person," Zara said, as they stood in the main hallway. "These items are priceless. Some of them are older than your entire civilization." They decided to live in separate wings of the house to avoid awkwardness. Jake took the east side, which had a modern kitchen and a room he could use as an office. Zara chose the west wing, which was quieter and had big windows overlooking the garden. For the first few weeks, they barely saw each other. Jake was busy, meeting with lawyers and financial advisors, learning how to manage his sudden wealth. The inheritance was even bigger than the will had indicated. Besides the house and land, there were bank accounts, investment portfolios, and research facilities that were worth a fortune. Zara spent her time exploring the house and grounds. She found rooms full of books about space travel, alien cultures, and advanced technology. There was even a greenhouse filled with plants from dozens of different worlds. Great-Aunt Maggie had apparently been collecting things for decades. Their first real conversation happened by accident. Jake was working late in his office when he heard strange music coming from somewhere in the house. Curious, he followed the sound until he found Zara sitting at an ancient-looking instrument in one of the library rooms. The music was unlike anything Jake had ever heard. It sounded like wind chimes mixed with whale songs, beautiful and haunting. At the same time, Zara's fingers moved across the strings with practiced skill, her eyes closed in concentration. "I'm sorry," Jake said when the song ended. "I didn't mean to interrupt." "It's okay," Zara replied, looking embarrassed. "Found this instrument in one of the storage rooms. It's from my home world. I haven't played one in years." "It's beautiful," Jake said, and he meant it. "I've never heard anything like it." "Music is very important in my culture," Zara explained. "We believe it helps connect souls across great distances. When I play, I can almost feel my brothers back home." Jake sat down in a nearby chair, genuinely interested. "Tell me about them. Your brothers, I mean?" Zara's face lit up as she talked about Tom and her 2 younger brothers who were still on their home planet. She explained how their world had been torn apart by war, how families had been separated, and how she was working to bring her remaining family to safety on Earth. "That's why this arrangement is so important to me," she said. "It's not just about money or citizenship. It's about saving the people I love." Jake felt a strange pang in his chest. He had been so focused on solving his own problems that he hadn't really thought about what this meant for Zara. She wasn't just some alien he had made a deal with. She was a person with real feelings, real fears, and real people depending on her. "I hope it works out," he said quietly. "Really do." From that night on, their relationship began to change. They started eating dinner together sometimes, sharing stories about their very different lives. Jake learned that Zara was incredibly smart. With degrees in engineering and environmental science from universities on her home world, she had been working basic jobs on Earth, not because she wasn't qualified for better ones, but because most companies wouldn't hire aliens for professional positions. Zara learned that Jake wasn't the selfish person she had first thought he was. Yes, he had married her for money, but he had also spent everything he had trying to save his father. He was lost and desperate, not greedy and cruel. Still, they maintained their boundaries. This was a business arrangement, nothing more. We're helping each other out of difficult situations, but that didn't make them friends. At least, that's what they both kept telling themselves as the days passed, and they found more reasons to spend time together. The house felt less empty with both of them in it. And for the first time in months, neither Jake nor Zara felt completely alone in the world. 6 months into their marriage, the problems started showing up like cracks in a wall. At first, everything seemed perfect. Jake had more money than he had ever dreamed of, and Zara was finally able to send funds to help her family. Money, Jake was learning, it's brought its own set of complications. Jake's first big purchase was a brand new sports car. It's bright red and faster than anything he had ever driven. He told himself he deserved it after years of taking the bus and walking everywhere. Then came the expensive clothes, the fancy watch, and the high-tech gadgets he had always wanted but could never afford. "Don't you think you're spending a lot?" Zara asked one evening as Jake showed off his latest purchase, a virtual reality gaming system that cost more than most people made in a month. "It's my money," Jake replied, a bit more sharply than he intended. "Besides, there's plenty more where that came from." Zara didn't say anything else, but Jake could see the disapproval in her 3 eyes. She had been raised to be careful with resources, coming from a world where everything was scarce. The idea of buying things just because you could seemed wasteful. To her, while Jake was shopping for luxury items, Zara was doing something completely different with her share of the inheritance. She had quietly started an organization to help other alien refugees who were struggling on Earth. She rented a small building in the city and began offering services like job training, legal advice, and temporary housing for newly arrived families. Jake didn't find out about this until he saw a large donation on their shared bank statement. When he confronted Zara about it, she explained what she was doing with a passion that surprised him. "There are thousands of beings like me who came here with nothing," she said, her voice getting stronger as she talked. "They're working terrible jobs, living in awful conditions, and being treated like they don't matter. I can't just sit in this big house and pretend they don't exist." "But you're giving away huge amounts of money," Jake argued. "Money that we both earned by getting married. Shouldn't we talk about these decisions together? You bought a car worth $60,000 without asking me," Zara shot back. "Why is helping people different from helping yourself?" The fight escalated quickly. Jake accused Zara of being reckless with their finances. Zara accused Jake of being selfish and materialistic. They said things that hurt, bringing up old fears and insecurities that had nothing to do with money. "I should have known this wouldn't work," Jake said in frustration. "We're too different. We want completely different things." "Maybe you're right," Zara replied coldly. "Maybe this was a mistake." After that fight, they started avoiding each other again. The big house suddenly felt tense and uncomfortable. They ate meals at different times and spent their days in separate parts of the property. When they did have to interact, their conversations were polite but distant. Jake threw himself into new business ventures, trying to recapture the excitement he had felt when he first started his failed company. He invested in several startups, bought stocks, and even considered purchasing a small tech firm. Having money made him feel powerful and important in a way he had never experienced before. But the more Jake focused on wealth and status, the more empty he felt inside. The fancy car didn't make him happy for long. The expensive clothes felt like costumes. The big house echoed with loneliness, especially when he heard Zara's beautiful music drifting from the other wing late at night. Meanwhile, Zara's refugee center was becoming a huge success. Word spread through the hidden alien communities, and soon she was helping dozens of families every week. She hired staff, expanded programs, and even started teaching classes about Earth culture and human customs. Jake would sometimes see news articles about her work online. The reporters always described her as a mysterious philanthropist because she tried to keep a low profile. Reading these articles made Jake feel strange. Pride mixed with guilt, admiration mixed with resentment. This was the woman he had married. For convenience? but she was becoming someone amazing. While he was just getting richer, the breaking point came on a rainy Tuesday evening in late fall. Jake was in Maggie's old study, looking through some financial documents, when he discovered something that made his blood run cold. Hidden behind a false panel in the desk was a room he had never seen before. The secret room was filled with incredible technology. There were machines that hummed with strange energy, computers with displays he couldn't understand. And in the center of it all was a device that looked like a cross between a telescope and a musical instrument. Papers scattered around the room showed detailed blueprints and notes in his aunt's handwriting. But what really shocked Jake was finding Zara there, working on one of the machines with tools he had never seen before. She was so focused that she didn't notice him at first. Her three eyes were studying the device intently, and her hands moved with the confidence of someone who understood exactly what she was doing. "What is this place?" Jake demanded, his voice echoing in the small room. Zara jumped, startled by his sudden appearance. For a moment, she looked guilty, like a child caught doing something forbidden. "I found it a few weeks ago," she said carefully. "Your aunt was working on something incredible. This machine could change everything. You decided to just take over her work without telling me?" Jake's anger was building. "It's my inheritance, my aunt's research, my property. It's not about ownership," Zara tried to explain. "This device could help millions of people. It's a communication system that would let different species understand each other perfectly. Your aunt was trying to build bridges between worlds." But Jake wasn't listening to her explanations. All he could see was another example of Zara making important decisions without including him. First, the money for her charity. Now this secret project. He felt betrayed and shut out of his own life. "You've been lying to me," he said, his voice getting louder. "Sneaking around behind my back, using my family's things for your own projects. I trusted you, and this is how you repay me. Your trust." Zara's voice rose to match his. "You've never trusted me. You married me because I was useful, and now you're angry because I'm trying to do something meaningful with my life? That's not fair," Jake protested. "Isn't it?" Zara stood up, all three of her eyes blazing with emotion. "You spend your days buying toys and playing with investments while I'm trying to help people who are suffering. You live in this beautiful house and complain about money I spend on families who have nothing. You want to talk about trust? You don't even see me as a real person?" The words hit Jake like a physical blow. "That's not true. Then prove it." Zara challenged. "Tell me one thing you know about who I really am. Not the alien you married for money, but me. What do I dream about? What makes me laugh? What keeps me awake at night?" Jake opened his mouth to answer, then realized he couldn't. Despite living together for months, despite their conversations and shared meals, he had never really tried to know Zara as a person. He had been so focused on his own problems and desires that he had treated her like a business partner rather than a human being. The silence stretched between them, filled with months of unspoken hurt and misunderstanding. "I thought so," Zara said quietly. "You know what, Jake? You got your money. You got your inheritance. You don't need me anymore." She walked past him toward the door, then paused without turning around. "I'll have divorce papers drawn up tomorrow. You can keep everything. I just want my freedom." Jake stood alone in the secret room, surrounded by his great-aunt's unfinished work, finally understanding that he had gained everything he thought he wanted and lost something he was only now realizing might have been far more valuable. The mansion felt like a tomb after Zara left. Jake wandered through the empty halls, his footsteps echoing off the walls in a way that made the silence even more unbearable. For the first 3 days, he told himself he was better off alone. Number 6. More arguments about money. No more weird alien music keeping him awake. No more judgment about how he chose to spend his inheritance. But by the 4th day, Jake realized something was terribly wrong. The house wasn't just quiet, it was dead. Without Zara's presence, all the beautiful alien artifacts looked like museum pieces gathering dust. The greenhouse she had tended so carefully was already starting to wilt. Even his expensive new gadgets felt meaningless and boring. Jake found himself spending more and more time in Grattant, Maggie's study, reading through her old journals and research notes. What he discovered there changed everything he thought he knew about his eccentric relative. Maggie hadn't been crazy at all. She'd been a brilliant scientist who spent 40 years working to build better relationships between humans and alien species. Her journals told an incredible story of secret meetings, dangerous missions to other worlds, and tireless efforts to help refugee families find safety on Earth. Most humans fear what they don't understand, one journal entry read, but I've learned that every species, no matter how different they might look, shares the same basic needs: love, safety, purpose, and connection. If we could just see past the surface, we might discover that we're more alike than we ever imagined. Another entry, written just months before her death, mentioned Jake specifically. I've been watching my great-nephew from a distance. He's lost and hurting, but there's kindness in him that he doesn't even recognize. I believe the right partnership could help him discover who he's truly meant to be. Reading those words made Jake's chest feel tight. His aunt had planned everything, down to the specific wording of her will. She hadn't just wanted to give him money. She had wanted to teach him something important about life and love. But the lesson he was supposed to learn was walking away from him, and Jake wasn't sure how to get it back. On her impulse, decided to visit Zara's refugee center, he told himself. He was just curious about how his money was being spent, but deep down he knew that wasn't the real reason. He needed to see her again, even if she didn't want to see him. The center was in a converted warehouse in a part of the city Jake had never visited before. From the outside, it didn't look like much, but inside was a bustling community that took his breath away. Alien families were everywhere. But they didn't look scary or strange like Jake had once thought. They looked like regular people trying to build new lives in a difficult world. Children with unusual skin colors played together in a corner while their parents attended job training classes. Elderly beings with extra arms or different facial features shared stories and laughed together over cups of tea. Jake watched from the entrance, amazed by what Zara had built. This wasn't just a charity organization. It was a real community where beings from dozens of different worlds could find help, friendship, and hope. He spotted Zara across the room, kneeling beside a young alien child who was crying. The child had bright blue skin and 4 eyes, and seemed to be scared about something. Zara spoke to the child in a gentle voice, using a language Jake didn't recognize. Whatever she said made the child smile and run back to the play area. "She's amazing, isn't she?" a voice said beside Jake. He turned to see Tom, Zara's brother, watching him with those bright green eyes. "I didn't expect to see you here," Jake said awkwardly. "I volunteer here on weekends," Tom replied. "Someone has to keep an eye on my sister. She works too hard and trusts people too easily." Jake felt the criticism in those words. "She told you about the divorce." "She tells me everything," Tom said, including how much she cared about you and how badly you hurt her. The words stung, because Jake knew they were true. "I didn't mean to hurt her. I just thought, I don't know how to do this. Any of this." Tom studied Jake's face for a long moment. "You know, in our culture, we have a saying. The heart that is closed to beauty will find ugliness everywhere, but the heart that is open to love will discover treasures in the most unexpected places." What does that mean? "It means maybe you've been looking at this whole situation the wrong way," Tom said. "My sister didn't marry you for your money. She married you because she saw something in you that you can't see in yourself." Jake wanted to ask what that something was, but Tom was already walking away to help with a group of new arrivals. Over the next few weeks, Jake became a regular visitor to the center. At first, he just watched from a distance, but gradually he started helping out. He fixed broken computers, set up new equipment, and even taught basic technology classes to families who were struggling to adapt to Earth's digital world. The other refugees were suspicious of him at first. They had heard about the human who had bought their beloved Zara with a marriage contract. But as they saw Jake working alongside them, cleaning floors and organizing supplies without complaint, their attitudes began to change. Jake learned their names and their stories. There was Dr. Kenzo, a brilliant medical researcher from a planet where the sun had burned out. Mrs. Vex, an elderly teacher who had fled her world when the government began persecuting people with telepathic abilities. Young Pip, a teenager, whose parents had died in a space accident. Leaving him alone on a planet where his species was unwelcome, each story broke Jake's heart a little more and opened his eyes a little wider. These weren't strange creatures from scary movies. They were refugees, just like humans who had fled wars and disasters throughout history. They wanted the same things everyone wanted: safety for their families, opportunities to work and contribute, and a chance to build better lives. But the person who taught Jake the most wasn't an alien at all. It was Zara herself. Though she didn't know she was teaching him anything, Jake watched her work with endless patience and kindness. She never got frustrated when someone couldn't understand English, never acted superior even though she was clearly smarter than most people in the room, and never turned anyone away, no matter how little space or resources the center had left. One evening, as Jake was leaving the center after a long day of volunteer work, he overheard Zara talking to a young mother whose baby was sick. The mother couldn't afford to take the child to a human doctor. The alien medical practices she knew wouldn't work on Earth. "Don't worry," Zara said, her voice full of calm confidence. "I'll call Dr. Martinez tonight. She's been helping us for months, and she never charges families who can't pay. Your baby will be fine," Jake realized. In that moment, that he had never seen Zara's true beauty before. It wasn't about her purple skin or silver hair or 3 eyes. Her beauty came from the kindness that radiated from her like warm sunlight. The way she made everyone around her feel valued and protected. He had been so focused on what she looked like that he had missed who she really was. And now, because of his own blindness and selfishness, he was losing the most extraordinary person he had ever met. That night, Jake sat in his empty mansion and finally understood what his great aunt Maggie had been trying to tell him. The inheritance wasn't about money or property. It was about learning to see with his heart instead of his eyes, and discovering that the most valuable things in life often come disguised as ordinary moments with extraordinary people. But understanding the lesson and knowing how to fix his mistakes were 2 very different things. Jake had hurt Zara deeply, and he wasn't sure she would ever forgive him. Still, he had to try. The alternative was spending the rest of his life wealthy but completely alone, surrounded by expensive things that could never fill the emptiness in his heart. Jake spent 3 sleepless nights trying to figure out how to win Zara back. Thought about grand gestures like in the movies, expensive gifts, or romantic speeches. But every idea felt hollow and fake. How do you apologize to someone for not seeing their worth? How do you prove that you've changed when your track record shows nothing but selfishness? The answer came to him while he was working alone in Great Aunt Maggie's secret laboratory. He had been spending hours there trying to understand the strange communication device that Zara had been repairing. The machine was incredibly complex, with parts that seemed to defy everything Jake knew about technology. According to his aunt's notes, the device could do something impossible. It could let 2 different species share thoughts and emotions directly, creating perfect understanding between beings who might never be able to communicate otherwise. Maggie had spent years building it, believing it could end conflicts between worlds and bring lasting peace to the galaxy. But the machine was broken. Jake's limited technical knowledge wasn't enough to fix it. He needed help, and there was only one person skilled enough to complete his aunt's work. Jake's plan was simple, but terrifying. He would ask Zara to help him finish the device, and then he would use it to show her everything in his heart. Not just words that could be lies, but his actual thoughts and feelings. If she could see inside his mind, she would know that his love for her was real. Of course, the plan had one major flaw. If Zara looked into his thoughts, she would also see all his ugly memories, his petty jealousies, and his moments of weakness. The machine would show her everything, good and bad. But Jake realized that was exactly what he needed to do. Real love meant being completely honest, even when it was scary. Finding the courage to call Zara took 2 more days. She finally answered her phone. Her voice was cold and professional. "What do you want, Jake?" "I need your help with something," he said, his heart pounding. "It's about your aunt's device. I think I know how to finish it, but I can't do it alone." There was a long pause. "Why would I help you with that?" "Because it's not really for me," Jake said honestly. "It's for everyone." Your aunt believed this. Machine could change the world, and I think she was right. But more than that, I want to use it to show you something important. Show me what? Jake took a deep breath. The truth. About how I feel. About who I really am. About everything I should have said months ago, but was too scared to admit. Another pause. Longer this time. I'll think about it, Zara said finally, and hung up. 3 days later, Zara showed up at the mansion. She looked tired and sad, but she had brought her tools and a determined expression. Jake felt his heart jump when he saw her, but he tried to stay calm. I'm not doing this for you, she said as they walked to the laboratory. I'm doing it because your aunt's work deserves to be completed. This device could help millions of people understand each other better. I know, Jake said, and I'm grateful. Working together on the machine was both wonderful and painful. But you got to see Zara's incredible intelligence up close as she solved problems that had stumped his aunt for years. Her 3 eyes would focus intensely on the technical drawings while her hands moved with precise skill. Connecting circuits and adjusting components, they worked mostly in silence, but Jake found himself stealing glances at her whenever he could. The way she bit her lip when she was concentrating, the soft humming sound she made when she was pleased with her progress. The graceful way she moved around the small laboratory space. After 2 weeks of careful work, the machine was finally ready. It looked like a combination of a helmet and a musical instrument, with glowing crystals and delicate wires that pulsed with gentle light. The connection only lasts for a few minutes, Zara explained as they prepared to test it. And both people have to agree to share their thoughts. It won't work if someone is trying to hide something or lie. Jake nodded, understanding the implications. Are you willing to try it? With me? Zara looked at him for a long moment, studying his face. Why is this so important to you? Because I've been trying to tell you how I feel for weeks, but words aren't enough, Jake said. I want you to see inside my heart, to know that everything I'm saying is real. But I also want to see yours, to understand who you really are. And what I put you through, you might not like what you see, Zara warned. In my mind, you'll experience how it felt to be treated like a business transaction. You'll feel the loneliness and hurt I've been carrying. I need to feel that, Jake said firmly. I need to understand what I did to you. Zara studied the machine for several minutes, running her fingers over the smooth surfaces. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but after this, whatever happens, we'll both know the complete truth about each other. They sat facing each other, each wearing part of the strange device. Zara's 3 eyes met Jake's too, and she reached out to activate the machine. The world around them seemed to fade away as their minds connected. The experience was overwhelming. Jake felt Zara's memories flooding through him like a river of emotion. He experienced her childhood on a dying planet, watching her world tear itself apart with war. He felt her terror during the dangerous journey to Earth, not knowing if she would survive or ever see her family again. But more painful were her memories of their marriage. Jake felt how hopeful she had been at first, thinking that maybe this strange human might become a friend. He experienced her growing attraction to him, the way his small kindnesses had meant everything to her. He felt her heart breaking when she realized he saw her as nothing more than a useful tool. At the same time, Zara was seeing Jake's memories. She felt his desperation when his father was dying, his crushing loneliness after the funeral, and his genuine terror of being homeless and forgotten. She experienced his wonder the first time he heard her play music, his growing respect for her intelligence, and his confusion about his own feelings. Most importantly, she felt the moment Jake's feelings changed from gratitude to something deeper. It had happened gradually through dozens of small moments. Watching her tenderly care for the alien plants in the greenhouse, seeing her cry while reading a letter from her brothers, listening to her laugh at something silly on television, Jake had fallen in love with her without even realizing it, and then been too scared and stubborn to admit it to himself. When the connection ended, both of them were crying. They sat in silence for several minutes, processing everything they had shared. I'm sorry, Jake whispered finally. I'm so sorry for everything. You deserved so much better than what I gave you. You were hurt and scared, Zara replied, her voice gentle. I understand that now. But Jake, understanding doesn't mean I can. Just forget what happened, I know, Jake said. But I also know that what I feel for you is real. It's not about the marriage contract or the inheritance or any of that business stuff. I'll love you, Zara. Not because you're useful, but because you're amazing. Because you make the world better just by being in it. Zara looked at him with awe. 3 eyes, seeing him clearly for the first time. I felt that in your thoughts. The love is real. But love isn't enough by itself. Then what else do you need? Jake asked. I need to know that you see me as an equal partner, not someone you rescued or someone who should be grateful to you, Zara said. I need to know that you respect my dreams and my work. And I need to know that you're committed to growing into the person I saw in your heart, not just when it's convenient. Jake thought about that for a moment. What if we started over? Not the marriage, but getting to know each other. We know each other this time as equals. Zara smiled for the first time in weeks. I think I'd like that. 6 months later, they had a second wedding. This one was very different from the first. It took place in the garden of their mansion, surrounded by hundreds of friends from both human and alien communities. Children from the refugee center threw flower petals, while musicians from a dozen different worlds played songs of celebration. Jake and Zara had spent those 6 months learning to be true partners. They made decisions together, supported each other's dreams, and built something beautiful from the foundation of honesty the communication device had given them. The mansion became a center for interspecies cooperation, with Jake and Zara working together to help other couples navigate the challenges of cross-cultural relationships. Great Aunt Maggie's device was used to help solve conflicts and build understanding between different communities. As Jake watched his wife dance at their reception, her silver hair catching the starlight and her 3 eyes sparkling with joy, he realized that his aunt's greatest gift hadn't been the money or the house or even the amazing technology. Her greatest gift had been teaching him that love comes in forms we might never expect to recognize, and that the most valuable inheritance of all is an open heart willing to see beauty in the most unlikely places.